Up joining the Navy in '86 when I was involved in a motorcycle accident going to my ship. I became paralyzed from a broken neck and a bunch of internal injuries. I thought my life was over.
I tell you, that's a motley looking crew right there.
Oh man.
So I'm with Frank Kelly today. We're heading to a church in Holdenville, Oklahoma. It's a biker church that's been really they've gotten involved with what you're doing down there.
Freedom Crossroads Biker Church out of Holdenville. Yeah. We wanted to open a free clinic up down there, and they've been instrumental in supplying people and everything that we need to get started, get running. We're giving free medical care, primary care to uninsured, mostly working people and some other people, really making a difference. And so, yeah, going down to church this morning. It's about 25 miles away or so. Just
catching a little road time.
Yeah.
Little foggy weather, rainy.
Good fall day, overcast.
Perfect time to get together and talk about our story. So,
yeah.
Frank's a neighbor of mine, and not only is he a neighbor, but he's a good friend, and he's gotten involved in a veterans life group that we've started here in Shawnee, and from there it's just kind of developed into other things. And so we're going to talk a little bit about Frank's journey, and he's got quite a story, and I'd like for you to be able to hear a little bit of it. So Frank, tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about what's going on with you.
Well, I was born in the mid-'60s in northeastern Ohio. That was a steel industry, a very working class kind of place, and grew up there through the Vietnam War era and the 70s. Moved to Oklahoma in 1979. My dad transferred out here with General Motors. So I went through high school.
Well, it's your driving, Frank.
I know. Is that a good enough view?
Yes. Yeah.
So I went to high school here in Oklahoma, rural high school north of Shawnee, Meeker, Oklahoma. Graduated and was a trained welder. So I was planning on going to work in the construction industry, and did, until the economy collapsed in the 80s. Took away a lot of the job opportunities, so I wound up joining the Navy in '86. Went through training and engineering. Went to a ship on the East Coast that was part of the Mediterranean fleet, going over to the Middle East in that area. Served there until 1988, when I was involved in a motorcycle accident going to my ship, back and forth transporting. Became paralyzed from a broken neck and a bunch of internal injuries, and spent the next year or so in the hospital and trying to recover. Wound up paralyzed. Then you got to ask, why am I driving?
Man, so that's a perfect example. So you're paralyzed, but now you're moving, and as a physical therapist, that tells me it was an incomplete quadriplegia. What level was that?
C5, C6. Shattered both those vertebrae.
How long were you down as far as immobile and not able to take a step or anything?
Didn't take a step for the first year or so, probably. And there wasn't a lot involved, and they didn't want to do a lot of physical therapy because I was unstable. Hadn't had a surgery to fix it, and didn't want to let the Veterans Administration do it at that time.
How dark was that?
I thought my life was over. I'd literally lived my life. My dad was an alcoholic, so I was pretty much on my own, and in a sense. Um, was on my own after high school. I was very proud of the fact that I didn't need anybody for anything, and then all of a sudden I'd lost it all
That's
and couldn't cope.
so you're laying in bed, you're looking at the ceiling, and you're wondering what's the next move? What's
Was trying to figure out what to do in life. All the skills I had involved had a physical component, and obviously my hands, the way they are now, I was down to where I had no skills. I was sick all the time, no ability to take care of myself very well, and I had to kind of figure it all out from scratch.
and that's a lot of weight as far as mentally and emotionally, isn't it?
Yeah, I was already kind of a loner and kind of bitter about life. If And so it just made it a lot worse. Angry all the time, anxious, stressed, couldn't sleep, had infections show up in my kidneys, several a year, some of them really bad.
And that's not abnormal.
No.
That's normal whenever you're dealing with that type of
For
diagnosis.
spinal cord injury, a lot of times they just, for a lack of a better way of expressing myself, you sit in your chair waiting to die.
Yeah.
And you just try to take care of medical needs and live off of whatever you can. Mine had got to the point where the VA wasn't able to really take care of it very well at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd given up on my VA benefits and switched to Medicare to be able to go to normal doctors and get care, and was able to maintain. But it's still, anytime I could be in the middle of something and I had a strain of infection that would turn septic really fast, and if I didn't get to the hospital within a couple hours, I would die. So I was constantly tethered to that, and trying to be active in the middle of all this and get up and around again. And it was a very, mentally, it was very much of a struggle.
So when did that light come on that, hey, I need to shake this.
Well, at first it was anger. It was, I probably had the same thought that most people have, that I'm going to recover. Life is going to be normal. That was my goal, to get back to normal. And that angerness and bitterness and drive and resolve would just push me. And eventually I got discharged from the VA rehab, still using a walker. I didn't have any feeling in my legs, but I could use them a little bit. I started working out in a gym with some friends and managed to get a little bit in shape as far as physical. I still had the fact that my legs were messed up and my hands were messed up, but I did quite a bit of stuff, and the light bulb started coming on finally that life would never be normal again, but different is okay.
Yeah.
It could be better.
Yeah.
But it took a lot to be able to. It was mostly in my brain. The physical struggles is one thing, but the mental struggles is a big part of it. Learning to deal with people and understanding that my perspective colors how I look at the world, but other people, it affects other people too.
Mm-hmm.
So despite the fact that I have all this baggage that I'm carrying around, I can't just go through the world spilling that on everybody, expecting them to accommodate me in every little aspect of my life. So I had to learn to be able to deal with people.
Tell me about that first time that you stood up. I take it with a walker. Tell me about taking that first step.
Actually, a good story about that. I was in the VA. They did not want to do physical therapy because they were understandable. I was in really bad physical shape and I could get hurt, not being able to move body parts. And they wanted me to do community readjustment. And I did not want to do community readjustment. I wanted to do physical therapy. So we would have that battle. And there was a nurse that I was kind of friends with, really great person. She came to pick me up to go to my community readjustment class, and of course I was refusing. She said, "What is it that you want out of life?" And I said, "I want to stand up." And she said, "Well, okay, let's do it." And I was like, "What?" She said, "Come on." So she grabbed me and helped me to, she pretty much lifted me up at that point. But I stood up for a minute, and she was like, "There, you happy now?" And I was like, "Well, yeah." And so went on and went through the system and did their thing, and till I got discharged. And but that moment, somebody actually took a second to actually care about me and how I felt,
Right.
and helped me, had an impact on me. And then it sort of changed my attitude a little bit. Like, you know what? I could do this. I just need to adapt, adjust, have a plan, and work hard and figure out. There was not a lot of people that are considered quadriplegic that walk and do normal stuff.
Yeah.
So I started thinking, okay, well, I'm going to find my own way. And I started working on it at that point. So that was the moment.
And at that time, you were already perfectly married and a perfect Christian at the same time.
Yeah. I was not married.
Okay.
I was not a Christian. I was wrestling with God because I never was really a Christian. My parents took me to church on holidays a couple times, but funny, I was 3 days before my accident. I was in the engine room. I was doing night watch, and there was a guy that was transferring from another job that wanted to get into engineering and do what we're doing. So he was following me around. We were the same rank, and we were having coffee. It was about 3 a.m. It was a late night watch. I was explaining stuff to him, and we were just sitting there, and he said, "Hey, have you ever considered a relationship with Jesus Christ?" And of course, at that point, I was like, stop. It's 3 a.m. I don't need to hear that. He has nothing that I need. I've got everything that I need. I got the life that I want. And of course, 3 days after that, I had the accident. After I kind of woke up 6 months later, I started thinking about all that, but really didn't come to God. I just wrestled with it and this may sound stupid because a lot of the things in my testimony, there's documented in the medical records, actual miracle stuff going on. And people would always say that, "You're a walking miracle." And I just sort of nod and smile.
What's an example of that? Give me
the fact that I was here's a good one, right after my accident. It had probably been about a week. And keep in mind that I was thrown 65 feet off a motorcycle head first into a 69 Dodge Charger, which is one of them big old muscle cars. I moved it 4 feet with my head and the front of my body. So I busted my heart, my lungs, my ribs, my neck. I had a head injury, even though I was wearing a really good quality racing helmet. It was all smashed. And so they weren't expecting me to make it. And my parents had come in from Oklahoma into Virginia, and they were sitting there. I was on life support. They were kind of waiting for me to die. I started having cardiac arrest. My lungs would fill up, and they'd try to clean all the fluid out. I probably had, I think from the scars, I had about 15 tubes draining stuff out of my body, and then they were putting stuff in. And I had 2 cardiac arrests in one evening, and they'd called in a minister from what my parents said, and were getting ready for my demise. They said that I wouldn't survive a third one. And at that time in Oklahoma, there was a group of friends. They were at the Methodist church here. They were writing cards like they do, and there was one my friend's parents from high school that was there. She wrote a little, it's called a prayergram, where they would say they're praying for you and date, time it, and then mail it to you. Afterwards, years later, I was looking through all my stuff, and I have a copy of my medical records that shows the time that they told my parents that, hey, it's time. And it's the exact same time that it's written down. I have the evidence that they were praying for me. Well, it says in my medical record 10 minutes later, my eyes were open. I was trying to sit up, even though I couldn't move very much, but I was complaining about being hungry. So at that point, the doctors were like, maybe he's going to survive.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and there's dozens of stories like that throughout my testimony. So all that being said, eventually my wife, I got married to somebody that I went to school with, and was having trouble with finding my purpose and that kind of stuff. And she suggested we go to church. She grew up in the local church. And so we went, and eventually after about 2 months, I was listening to a sermon, and it all clicked about purpose and destiny and a relationship with God. And I felt like an idiot. I was like, God's been with me the whole time. So
we just don't listen.
No.
That's the hardest thing to do, is just be silent and listen. So have you ever thought about your trauma and how that affected your mom and dad on that day of seeing you in the hospital, jacked up, not going to move again? Can you imagine the stress they were going through?
Oh, no. I mean, they were already going through normal stresses of that type of relationship in that time period in history. And no, it probably just wiped everybody out mentally. And I'm very self-centered. I mean, I'm all about me at that time. So I had very little consideration of other people, and rightly so. I mean, I was going through a lot, but
that's normal.
Yeah,
that's the way everyone goes. But you start looking at it and you go, okay, now looking back on this situation, I can see the impact that it had.
The impact that it had on my family, my wife,
friends, family,
and not to mention that I'm dealing with a legitimate brain injury that's got its own stuff going on.
And it's almost like in my field, in the physical therapy rehab field, you have someone that's been injured, and it's almost like there's a part of them that dies, because your core group of friends, your group that you hang out with, your ones you go to lake, ball games, whatever, all of a sudden that starts to kind of dry up a little bit, doesn't it?
Oh yeah. There was a few people, but I lost everybody, and I didn't have that many to begin with. And there was some. I mean, I didn't lose everybody, but it put sort of a wall between, because I'm different now. I'm not just different physically. I'm different mentally, and I'm going in a different direction, and so it's very isolating, even when you're around people that you've known for a while. And I've been in the town that I'm in now since '79, so that's a long time, and there's a lot of people that I just don't. I know them. We say hi,
right?
But we're just not connected.
So
I'm also not the easiest person to get along with.
Well, I noticed that.
I try to be, but I could be. We had meetings this week, and one of the things that I deal with is meetings and being in a group of people. Just my brain just goes into overdrive. It feels like there's a tornado coming. That's one way I described it, that I can see a tornado coming in the window, and I feel the fight or flight urge, which is one of the things that happens. It never shuts off, and I just want to get out of there. And if somebody wants to stammer on for 20 minutes about stuff that's not pertinent to the meeting, I just immediately just get an attitude of like, move on. And
we were at a beautiful wedding last night at Cole's Garden up in Oklahoma City, and our family was there. It was one of my cousins getting married. A lot of people I didn't know, and I'm just not into the big crowds. And whether it's with family or whether it's with a big group that I just don't know, that's not me.
Yeah, and it can seem, people take things personal, and that's understanding, and people can be offended by that. And it's not that, I don't mean it to be that way, and I try very hard to explain that. That's one of the things I've had to learn to do. It's very, very difficult.
Yeah.
We grew up in an era where you pull yourself up by the bootstraps, and I still live that way. But there's some things that it just doesn't. Those bootstraps just don't pull up, and you have to deal with them a different way. And staying out of crowds and social events it's like I described with the tornado sometimes.
Tell me about one of the darkest times in your life post-accident, to where you really.
That would probably be, out of everything that I went through, and we'll get into that as time goes on, but probably one of the biggest times has been in the last 5 years, because God was wanting to move me into something else, and I'd created a life. I'd created a medical ministry, and I liked it, and then the pandemic happened, and it all needed to be redone and needed to start from scratch. And in my personal life, I felt like I'd lived my purpose, and it was time to change. But I'm 60 years old. Well, I was 55 then, and I just didn't want to do that all over again. My physical problems were coming back because I'm getting older, and broke a lot of bones and things like that. And I didn't see a purpose. And it was very difficult figuring out, and part of me just wanted to die. I was just like, this would be a good time to die. I've done what I need to do. I can move on. And God's saying, no, I've got a purpose that's even bigger, and I've done some things in my life. I mean, as a partial quadriplegic, no feeling in my legs, I've rode 100-mile bike races.
I know.
In temperature. I mean, I've done some stuff. I've been to international mission trips that I put together and led, and went into mountain communities in South America, and just done all sorts of stuff. And God said, I have something bigger. And I'm like, what? I mean, physically, mentally, I'm not ready for that. And so the process of going through that was very dark, very deep, and it taught me to learn to bring other people into what I'm doing, and an aspect of starting to share this stuff, because during the times we're going through, and anytime, there's always people that are dealing with the same kind of stuff. So to start sharing some of that, and tips and tricks and how to deal with it.
I think that's the loneliness about being one of God's warriors.
Yeah. It can be that way sometimes. I really struggle with that, because I have to kind of do my own thing, because you work with groups, and I have people I work with, and I love some of the people I work with are just tremendous people. But at the end of the day, I'm spending a lot of time trying to figure out my own way, so that I can build a path in the medical community. We're working on free medical care for working people in rural Oklahoma, and trying to figure out cheap ways to do things, but make it quality care. There's just not a lot out there. Everything costs so much and involves so much labor, and to try and figure out a brand new way to do it. I'm not a medical person. I'm a medical patient. Figuring out medical administration, not only doing that, but trying to come up with cutting edge stuff in a cheap way. For example, by the end of next year, we should have 4 clinics, medical clinics, and 2 pharmacies. It could be, what would you say, $3 million a year to run something like that? We're doing it for $10,000 a year, and having quality video stuff. And to be able to do something like that just involves new ways of doing things, and then contacting the people around that are into that, supporting that kind of stuff, but not just begging for money all the time from different federal agencies or stuff, but figuring out a way to make it community driven. So like Holdenville, that we're going to now, a few thousand people. I don't know, I'll put the number up, but It's a small rural community with a small rural hospital. They're doing their own thing. All I am is the administration person. We use the county health department they let us use it for free as a free clinic, and then volunteers from this community come in and they bring their skills together, and then I kind of just do the administration stuff, and they make it happen. And it's just an incredible thing once it's done. But we had to figure that all out on our own.
I think that this is the perfect example, folks, of why we're doing this podcast. Because we're showing you a story that could have just changed the trajectory of however Frank went. But because he became in tune to what God was telling him, he was listening, man, all of a sudden this free clinic has started. And it started there at Ada-Lot Baptist Church in Shawnee, Oklahoma. And like you said, there'll be 4 clinics of going out in the community and being able to care for people for free, being able to give them medications for free. That's the power of what's going on. And so as we go down to Holdenville today, we're going to one of the churches that helps to, they're a big promoter of one of the
They are
free
the
clinics.
church. Yeah.
And so,
Biker church.
man, what a great time to be able to be on the road and talk about this.
I think something you said is very, very important too, Greg, and you've got your own story that's really cool. But you said learning to listen to God, and I think that was for me, and I think in a lot of people, they may not realize it, but you struggle with the self and God. And I had what I wanted to do, and that was in my religious life too. I had what I thought God wanted me to do, but I kind of shut God out of it some. I would discard parts of it that I didn't like and be like, okay, well, God kind of says you want to be in the medical field and do medical ministry. So I'll do that, but I'll do it my way.
Yeah.
And then at a certain point, okay, we opened up a free clinic right before a pandemic. that was a good move. But God took that and he said, now are you ready to listen to me? And that darkest moment that you're talking about, when I sat in my office and thought, I got to shut it down. It's not going to work. And God said, no, it will. Now you ready to do it my way? Completely my way, 100%, not 50%, not 70%, but 100%. If you'll listen to me and you'll take the time to shut out your own thoughts and say, okay, what do you want, God? And dwell on that for a while. And I did for maybe 3 months. God answered it in an incredible way. And it's very important to me to guard that and to try and stay listening to God.
Right.
And recognize the difference. God doesn't want us to just numb our brains. He wants to use them, but he wants to do it under his guidance and be more of a funnel. And I think the results of that, if more people could do that, they would be able to see incredible results. And a lot of times in church, and this is nothing against church, it's easy to beat up on church, but we're people. And when we tend to talk about mental health issues and listening to God, people just say, well, follow the Lord. Here's a scripture, and then they send them on their way. Okay, I want to do that. How do I do that? Well, just follow the Lord, pray, they're good things, but there's more to it than that. And whenever we start teaching on, okay, here's some steps to be closer to God and to let him take over and to deal with physical. I mean, I would love to just go to church and say, okay, make these hands go away.
Yeah.
Could God do it? Sure, he could. But he also wants to take those hands and use those to show his power instead of mine. And so a lot of times I've got to go to physical therapy. I've got to go to the doctor and get medicine for infections. So there's steps that we need to take that we're capable of rationalizing them out. And those go with scripture. And then we listen to God and do stuff. And I don't think we spend enough time on the actual steps and the teaching. And sometimes we even shout those down when people are struggling with that. So I think that's an area where we can benefit and do a lot better.
I agree. I'm proud of you for sharing your story. It's one of those things that it's just not easy to get out there.
No, don't like to talk about it, but putting it all down on camera is going to be a pain, but I'm going to do it. And it will, there's a lot of things that we can share that will go a long ways towards helping people.